Let's talk about something most of us know all too well, anxiety. But we're going to look at it from a totally different angle. We're going to get into why it can be so ridiculously hard to shake, and the really surprising science that shows our brains can actually learn to let it go.
But first, let me start with a question, and it's a weird one. What if the very act of trying to calm down could backfire? What if it could actually make you feel even more anxious? It sounds completely backwards, I know, but this paradox is really the key to understanding the whole thing.
And this brings us to a phenomenon researchers actually have a name for: relaxation-induced anxiety. Yup, it's a real thing. It's the reason why that well-meaning advice to just calm down almost never works, and sometimes even makes things worse. For some people, trying to find that quiet place actually cranks up the anxiety instead of turning it down.
So researchers at Penn State started digging into this, and what they found is fascinating. They suggest that for people who are really sensitive to emotional shifts, staying worried, well, it actually feels like a defense mechanism. It's like you're bracing for impact. You're trying to protect yourself from the massive shock of going from calm and peaceful to suddenly terrified. In a very strange way, that constant, low-level worry feels safer than being caught completely off guard.
Now, to really get why our brains would do that, we have to zoom way out, way beyond modern psychology to our ancient survival instincts. Now, most of us have heard of fight or flight, right? But it turns out that's just the tip of the iceberg. Our bodies have a much bigger playbook for when we're faced with danger.
So here's the key difference. Think of fight or flight as a simple light switch. It's either on or off. But a more accurate model is something called the defense cascade. This is way more sophisticated. It's a whole sequence of responses, and our brain and body choose the right one based on how close and how serious the threat actually is. It's a much more dynamic, much more interesting picture of how we react to fear.
Let's just walk through that sequence real quick. It all starts with a freeze response. You stop, you become hyper-alert, you assess what's going on. Now, if that threat gets closer, your body escalates to flight or fight. But what if you can't run and you can't fight? That's when the body might trigger tonic immobility. You're literally paralyzed by fear. And if the threat is just completely overwhelming, it can lead to collapsed immobility. Think fainting or playing dead. Then finally, if the danger passes, the body enters quiescent immobility, a state of deep rest to recover from it all. And you know, this state of collapsed immobility, it's not just some abstract idea. This quote from an army surgeon watching an execution, it just captures it so vividly. It's a total shutdown. It's what happens when the nervous system is just utterly overwhelmed, and it's the final desperate stage of that defense cascade. Okay, so what does this ancient primal fear response have to do with that weird paradox about relaxing? Well, it all comes together in a psychological theory that explains why someone might actually choose to worry instead of be at peace. It's a misguided but understandable attempt to stay in control.
The theory is called contrast avoidance, and the core idea is pretty simple actually. For some people, the absolute worst part of something bad happening isn't just the event itself, it's that brutal emotional whiplash of going from feeling good to feeling awful. So to avoid that sudden, jarring shock, the brain just decides, you know what, I'm just going to stay in this state of steady, predictable worry.
And this chart here, it shows you exactly what that choice looks like in the brain's calculus. On the one hand, you've got the high but steady discomfort of constant worry. Yeah, it's unpleasant. But on the other hand, you could relax, but that comes with the risk of a much higher, sharper, more painful emotional spike if something bad suddenly happens. For a brain that's wired to avoid that contrast, that huge potential jump feels way more dangerous than just staying miserable but stable.
So you might be thinking, okay, this is all theory, right? But what if I told you we can actually see this happening in the brain? Thanks to modern neuroimaging, we can see the physical signature this internal struggle leaves, especially in conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. This right here is from a study using fMRI, which basically tracks brain activity in real time. And it's focused on a really key brain system called the default mode network, or DMN. You can think of the DMN as your brain's storyteller. It's the part that's active when we reflect on ourselves, our past, our memories. And what the study found was that in people with PTSD, this network spends way less time being active. It's almost as if the brain is actively avoiding that kind of deep internal process. But, and this is the most important part, the story doesn't end there, not even close. The very same research that found this brain signature also points us toward the solution. It shows that therapy isn't just talk. It can physically, fundamentally change how the brain operates. And now look at this. This is the after picture.
This is the very same brain network after successful therapy. You can see the activity in that default mode network is coming back online. It's starting to look more like what we see in healthy individuals. The brain is literally rewiring itself, reconnecting those vital circuits for self-reflection and for healing. So what this means is, healing from anxiety and trauma isn't just in your head. It's not just a feeling you're chasing. It is a tangible biological process. The hard work you do in therapy creates real, measurable changes in the physical structure of your brain.
All right, so let's just pull all these threads together real quick. We've seen that our fear response is this incredibly complex cascade, not just a simple on-off switch. We've learned that being stuck in a state of worry can actually be a misguided strategy to avoid a bigger emotional shock. We've seen the physical evidence of how trauma can change brain activity. And, most importantly, we've seen that good therapy can physically reverse those changes and bring things back into balance.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty powerful thought to chew on. If we know for a fact that we can rewire our brain's relationship with the past, what does that truly mean for the future we're all capable of creating for ourselves?